Hello, and welcome to the next episode of our Levelling Up podcast. Now, today I'd like to welcome Karen Julien, who is the Head of Procurement for Inchcape. Hi, Karen.
Morning, Paula. Nice to be here.
Oh, it's so nice to have you join me today. Thank you so much. It's really appreciated.
Yeah, me too. I'm looking forward to it.
Good. And you have had such an interesting career, I have to say, and worked in so many different interesting industries. But one of the areas that's really interested me about what you've been involved in is you've been instrumental in mergers and acquisitions across organisations historically. What role did procurement play within those mergers and acquisitions, and why do you feel it's so important for procurement to be involved in it?
I think I've raised the importance throughout my career. So the first time I got involved was back when I was in aerospace, and it was one of the biggest mergers and acquisitions. UTC, United Technologies, bought 𝐏𝐫𝐤𝐬𝐨𝐝. And the reason I got involved was the entity that I was responsible for at the time crossed Monopolies Commission. So we had to be placed in a whole separate area of the business, so we were standalone business. So I had to break away all these global contracts so that we could stand alone and ultimately be sold. That was great for my career because I got exposure to things like banking, IT, infrastructure, things that I'd not been involved with previously. It was a bit scary because they were global agreements. I was fairly junior in my career, but it was great experience. And then ultimately it was the buying presentations and the integration when we were ultimately sold to, I think it was Safran in the end. So that was my first exposure and I quite enjoyed it. It was something different. Didn't have much to do with it when I was at Carillion, but then again when I joined Inchcape, most motor groups will buy and sell sites throughout. It's just what happens with the different franchises. And when I first started, you would find out that a site is sold by your suppliers, or someone would ring up and say, where's my coffee machine, or however. So I started to I had a really good relationship with legal at the time, so we put it to the CFO, and I slowly became more and more involved with all the acquisitions, divestments, and we built like a playbook from a procurement perspective of how to offboard sites and how to onboard sites. I got involved in buyer due diligence. So if we were buying a site, it would be making sure the buyer cancelled all their contracts where we had an equivalent, or likewise cancelling our contracts so the site could be passed back to the owner or the new acquirer. We had quite a good playbook for working with the other areas of the business to do that. And then the biggest involvement was obviously recently Inchcape Retail was acquired by Group 1 Automotive. Again, a massive acquisition. So again, I had to break away all the global contracts and kind of unravel those businesses that disappointingly I'd spent the last 2 years trying to integrate them both. Yeah. So just silly things like, we had a joint coffee machine contract. That was one of the smaller things, right up to things like data centers, software, Microsoft licenses. So it really was quite a complex contract exercise. And I think it's been a crazy year. I think we did 80 contracts between like January and the summer. And that was things like novation, new negotiation, just extending. I really had to, I suppose, work on a procurement strategy with both Inchcape PLC, because breaking away from them and they'd lose their leverage, and also with Group 1, the new buyers, because they had existing contracts that they'd want to integrate or not. So, for the first part of this year, that's all I've done is the procurement strategy around, separation and integration. So it's really interesting. I really enjoyed that part of my job.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. It sounds extremely pressurized as well, and it's especially being condensed in such a small reduced period of time as well. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, you've alluded to it already, but you build very strong alliances with other stakeholders across the business, and I know you've talked around empowering those stakeholders. How do you think that's actually helped you to succeed within your career?
I think it's helped me escalate the importance and value of procurement. You know, as I said to you earlier, I've got a really strong alliance with the legal team. And obviously, you know, during the M&A, we had to work very closely because there was so much to do. But I suppose even from kind of an operational perspective, generally in procurement, you're a kind of jack of all, master of none. So you need the subject matter experts to succeed in your role. And it's about getting them on side. You know, I've worked in, you know, engineering, construction. There's lots of people that have lots of, I suppose, technical knowledge that I don't have, that don't want to be told what to do. You know, traditional procurement is tell the business rather than work with the business. So it's educating them to collaborate, really. And again, it's a teaching exercise. They can teach me about their subject matter expert, and I can teach them about, you know, the best commercial model for them, or what we can do with the suppliers, how we can get the suppliers to value add for, you know, whatever it is we're buying or contracting. And I suppose, you know, to the point of career success, the more I've done that, the earlier I've been involved and engaged in projects and ultimately business strategy. So it's been really good to, I suppose, escalate my value up into the organisation to the point where we're talking strategy now, because ultimately procurement needs to align with what the business wants to do, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's so important to build those, like you said, very early on as well, or as early as you can do within your role, because it's going to support you the whole way through. And it sounds like you've done a great job across, particularly on the industries you've talked about. That brings me on quite nicely to the next question I was going to ask you as well, actually. So you've achieved quite a lot within your career already, which is great. What would you say so far has been your biggest achievement?
For me, I think the biggest achievement is making a successful career out of something that I didn't train for or choose. So I'm actually an art and design background. So I went to uni and I did model design. So I should have been making props and architectural models and things like that. So like most people, I fell into procurement because I could read engineering drawings at the time. So I was helping it was 𝐿𝐾𝐲𝐲𝐿𝐻𝐵 at the time, outsource their factory. So I think I found this new, I suppose it was more reliable than the freelance work I was doing. And I actually retrained straight away. I was lucky enough to get sponsorship for my SIPs. I went right through till level 6. I think I did it in 3 years. I didn't have any breaks. I was really like, right, I've got to do this and get it out of the way. So I think that's my biggest success, because I have kind of really turned things around and made a successful career out of something I didn't necessarily choose. But I suppose alongside that, it's really the team I work with. So, you know, my current team, I've fortunately been able to do full team development, a succession plan. So each of the team have got, you know, they've if they haven't got SIPs already, they're funded to do it. I've also managed to implement the first procurement apprentice within the business, which is really good in automotive, because obviously we've got a massive government levy, and I think we've obviously got the apprentices in the workshop, and we've got marketing and a couple of finance. So that was really good to bring in procurement as well. But also, not consciously, I've actually got an all-female procurement team in an automotive business, which I think is a big achievement as well. So for me, it's not necessarily the big deal or the big contracts or the tenders. I mean, I've done, you know, P2P implementation. There were various things in COVID, but for me, it's really about people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's lovely that you're saying that's your biggest achievement as well. But the fact that you're doing that succession planning and bringing on the next individuals within their career, particularly from an apprenticeship point of view, and having introduced that, I think that's fantastic. And as you've talked about it already, with regards to the being in engineering and automotive industries, but traditionally throughout all of your experience so far, you've worked in quite what's known as traditional male-dominated industries. How do you think that's helped to shape you as a procurement leader today?
It's definitely making me stronger and more determined. You know, I'm fortunate enough that obviously female in industry is more of a known thing now, but when I was a lot younger, it was harder. And, you know, in the aerospace days, you know, imagine me trying to buy a test rig for, you know, environmental testing for an aircraft generator, and an engineer with like 20 years experience looking at me and, you know, what can she tell me? So I have had lots of knockbacks, lots of pat me on the head, lots of, I suppose, humouring me. And it's just made me more determined. And I suppose, you know, taking it back to the stakeholder piece, it's made me learn how to collaborate and I suppose how to get people on side. I mean, you know, again, I refer back to the aerospace manufacturing times because that's probably the, I suppose, worst example. You know, when I was in supply development, I had somebody doing the same job as me, but I had a different title, and I've really had to fight to, I suppose, prove my worth. Say, look, I'm doing the same, I'm overperforming my objectives, and I think from then on, that just gave me the fire to succeed. Luckily, it's not as hard as that anymore, and you know, men and women are seen a bit more equal. But I definitely think it shaped me as a person and made me more determined.
Yeah, I can see that, particularly the examples that you've given as well. I think that does kind of light a fire inside you, doesn't it? You go, right, I'm going to make sure that I am very successful in this area. You mentioned that you've your team are selling SIPs and that you've supported them with that, and obviously you've done your SIPs. Why do you feel it's important for your team to be on their SIPs journey as well?
I think it's just a good formal path of progression. You know, it's a good I don't think anything can take away from life experience, and I don't think if you just did your SIPs, I don't think you could go in and be successful in procurement without some of that life experience. But I do think it gives you like a foundation. Excuse me. It gives you that foundation of learning and some of the theory behind why you do what you do, and you know, how to approach things differently. So I think it's valued, particularly if, you know, so my apprentice has literally come in straight from, I think she's had one job since kind of college, uni. So it's, while she's getting the life experience and the apprenticeship, I think it's good to get the theory behind that, and apply it while you're working. You know, you get the balance of both.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's very valuable for particularly apprenticeships and supporting that journey with them. So with obviously the next 5 years in your career, what are you hoping to achieve over the next 5 years, and what would you hope to have done on that journey?
I'm at a bit of a crossroads at the moment. I'm due to leave Inchcape next week. But I guess in terms of the next 5 years, I'd hope to get back into a fairly greenfield role, have aspirations to be a CPO or a procurement director. I see that as my next step. And I suppose my wishes would be to take what I've learned so far and apply that to a bigger team or a bigger organisation, and really get into kind of the business strategy side of procurement. And I'd love to, although it's been very busy, I quite like the M&A work. So, you know, to get an organisation involved with that too, that would be good too.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like an exciting time for you, because it always is, I think, when you come to a crossroads. So I wish you all the best in that next step, and hopefully it gives that pathway for that next succession to your career as well. And that is where you are in 5 years. So it'll be interesting to see. Maybe we'll interview you again in 5 years and see where you are.
Yeah, watch this space.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. I mean, it's been really interesting talking to you, particularly around the mergers and acquisitions piece as well, in seeing and understanding more as to how important that is. So thank you for sharing all this morning. It's really appreciated.
Yeah, thanks, Paula. It's been great talking.
No problem. And if you'd like to be part of our Levelling Up podcast, then the details will be at the end of the podcast today. So please do get in contact. And I hope just leaves me to again say thank you very much again to Karen.
Thanks, Paula.
Thanks.